The rise of anti-Semitism during the COVID-19 pandemic places special responsibility on the church.
Modern anti-Semitism is really more about Western culture and human nature.
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for viewing with us today. My name is Andrea Luxton. I am today's moderator. We have an excellent program for you and some panelists who I'd like to introduce themselves.
I'm Bishop Michael Olson, and I serve as the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
My name is Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as Senior Rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Hi, I'm Carl Troval, and I'm Professor of Ethics and History at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the Senior Minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
And now to today's topic. Human technology keeps expanding and getting better, but Western culture is stuck in the Middle Ages. We communicate instantly with millions of people on the other side of the world. Medical science does amazing things, identifying new diseases, predicting their potential to spread, and creating vaccines and treatments for them. Yet when it comes to anti-Semitism during the COVID-19 pandemic, you'd think we lived in 14th century Europe, fighting the bubonic plague. The creation of the virus has been blamed on Jews working in concert with laboratories in China. The virus was, according to these posts, bioengineered to hurt only non-Jews. Contradictory messages then also said that the virus was really no threat, but the shutdowns and vaccines devised to control it are part of the scheme by Jews. The shutdowns are meant to create a new world order run by Jews. And vaccines are a tool to sterilize the Gentile world. Never mind that Israel has been one nation at the forefront of getting their people vaccinated, because they're just getting inoculated with placebos. The never-ending loops of illogic and delusion might be funny if it wasn't also repetitious of themes that have recurred so regularly wherever and whenever anti-Semitism has reared its awful head. Here are some questions. Have our panelists seen other similar things in the United States and elsewhere? Is anti-Semitism an unavoidable feature of the sharing of the Christian gospel? And finally, how should Christians and the larger religious and even non-religious community respond? I'll go back to our panelists who started our conversation first.
Thank you. Well, I kicked the program off, and so I guess I need to expand on what I originally said, which was that this rise of anti-Semitism places a special responsibility on the church. I think a lot of the anti-Semitism that spiked during the pandemic was a feature of some things that churches can control and have some power over if they teach. I think churches should be places that teach about the Holocaust and about the causes of the Holocaust and the ways that people were indoctrinated by Nazis and over centuries, even before Nazism was created, and how that teaching still exists in some places, how those ideas still get floated about. And I think it's important for the church to teach about its own Bible, about the New Testament. I think it's important for the church to teach about those problematic texts, which, like in the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 27, where during the trial of Jesus, Matthew places in the mouth of the Jewish leaders words that say, let his blood be on us and on our children, and teach how that kind of language got put into Matthew's gospel in the first place, and what was going on in Matthew's church with people being having real difficulties staying in the synagogues that they were a part of at that time, and being kicked out of synagogues, and how some of what we see in the New Testament is reflective of stuff that was not going on in the life of Jesus, but was going on in a century later, or 3/4 of a century later, when the church was being formed. So those are the kinds of things, the responsibilities that I think the church can, by exercising those responsibilities, the church can cut down on some of the anti-Semitic talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So anti-Semitism has been called the oldest irrationality. And it is a virus of hatred that rears its head in all kinds of different ways throughout history. And basically what happens in society is you take the thing that society detests the most and you say, that's what Jewish people are. So over history, in modern times, you could see Jews are the evil capitalists that are robbing society. Or alternately, Jews are the sinister communists who are robbing us of our freedom. You even see this great irony that you see today, Jews are now Nazis, which to me is always the one that perplexes me the most. But where does this come from? It comes from, I think, when people say, I have no control over what's happening in my life, I am disadvantaged or oppressed, there must be somebody who's responsible for that. And that must be the Jews. The people I don't understand, the people who don't worship like me, the people who are not from there, the people who are different. And you saw this in Charlottesville when you saw people marching, chanting slogans like, Jews will not replace us. And what were they meaning? Well, they were talking about a conspiracy idea that Jews are literally trying to import people from other cultures to replace white culture in America. But where is that coming from? That's coming from a sense of, I feel like I'm losing my sense of my culture in America, so there must be somebody who's responsible for that. Similarly, we also see conspiracy theories that say there's going to be someone who will save us from that. And that's where I think you see the growth of the QAnon conspiracy, right? This idea that there is some savior out there buried in the depth of the internet or in the government who's going to save us from all of these problems. I think that the fear of the the COVID pandemic, I should say, is it's a platform on which all of those fears and the way that we deal with those fears comes to light by saying, oh, it must be Jews who are responsible for that. And ultimately, I think it requires us to take more responsibility to say, when there are things that cause oppression or pain or fear or whatever, it's our collective responsibility as a society, not just one element of society, to try to find our way out of that darkness.
Thank you. Bishop Olson.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the Catholic tradition, I want to start with the decree Nostra Aetate from the Second Vatican Council. And I quote, it says, "In her rejection of every persecution against any man, the Church, mindful of the patrimony she shares with the Jews, and moved not by political reasons but by the gospel's spiritual love, decries hatred, persecution, displays of anti-Semitism directed against Jews at any time and by anyone." Now, it's very important, and Catholics know that. And one of the reasons it is that since 1965, there has been a reckoning between Catholic tradition and history, and to look honestly at some of the things that have been done anti-Semitically in the persecution of the Jews, formally by institutions of the Church, as well as then also looking at things that were not done, or the exceptions done that stand out by many Catholics. I think the rabbi introduces something that's very important, as does Tom, and that is, I think one of the things that stands out among the Jews, all right, has been that, and one of the reasons I think that signals them for persecution predates Christianity and the coming of Christ, and that is that they've never been able to, or willing to conform to a basic paganism. In other words, in ancient Greece, Rome after that, prior to that, all of the gods, in a sense, were anthropomorphized, attached to powers. And so, Zeus, Jupiter, it's a little incense, whatever you want me to call it, I know what he does. But the Jews, because of the experience of Abraham and in the beginning of authentic monotheism, never conformed to that. Now, they worked on modus vivendi throughout history and everything else, but when you have an exception like that, all right, it's going to draw attention and also then opportunistic blame, all right, as well. And I think that's itself. Now, I want to say, as Catholics, quoting Pope Francis here most recently, it says, "Judaism as the religion of Jesus is at the heart of every Christian, but it's worth noting that the reverse is not true. Judaism does not claim to be similarly dependent on Christianity. And between Jews and Christians there can and should be one heart filled with the love of God and neighbor, shared in a common spiritual patrimony from Abraham down to our own day." Christian is not just a way to say nice person, all right? And it's also, I think, not fair and just to the Jews to say Judeo-Christian tradition. That's not, we can say some comment, but there is an authentic tradition of Judaism. God is faithful to his covenant and his promises that he made to the Jewish people to this day. And he does not turn his back on those. Just as we believe and accept the covenant of the new and eternal covenant, as we believe as Catholics in Christ.
Thank you. Dr. Trevor.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I want to condemn anti-Semitism at every possible level. And it's hard for me as a Lutheran sometimes to face up to my own tradition because Luther has made some outlandish and some terribly anti-Semitic remarks that are condemned at every level. I know that the LCA has officially condemned it in their public statements of Luther's own and his own, as far as I understand, while the Missouri Synod has never ever publicly condemned it in an official church conference and synodical meeting, it was condemned at every level in my seminary training, and so it was as Luther being completely off kilter in his because. And I want to share with those outside who may not be aware of this tradition, but Luther's marks were used even in Germany in Nazism to help support the oppression of the Jews there, and so it's an embarrassing statement of Luther's, and I just want to bring it to the fore because its motive was as Luther thought the Jews would come running to the Christian church because once the papacy was taken care of, then they would all convert to Christianity. And they didn't, and Luther was pretty angry about that. And hence, again, we get back to the scapegoating and fear. And I just want to be, probably more than anything, that's the one thing I want to say, is that I just condemn everything Luther said and all that. And this kind of stuff, this just happened in Austin, Texas, just last week, this same blaming of Jews for COVID on the Jews, and it's just sickening.
So okay, if I could ask you all a question, what do we do about it? I mean, we're all agreeing this is a real problem.
Yeah.
We kind of understand where it's coming from, but it's still here, it's still present. So what do we do?
That's what I'm saying. We have to start by teaching the history of the New Testament, teaching the history of the Bible, understanding that the Bible has a history and needs to be taught. It was written by different people who came out of different circumstances and were writing to audiences who were facing different problems. Consequently, some of the things that get translated the way they do in some of our modern versions can be quite problematic and have kept the church from standing up sometimes when the church needed to. So that's the second thing. We've got to teach, and then we got to stand up and say, no, this is wrong.
Okay.
I think also part of the way that we try to counter anti-Semitism or all kinds of hatred is to be in the presence of people who we don't really know. So when you think about it, there are about 7.5 billion people on the planet, and the Jewish people number 15 million of them. We're a rounding error in humanity. The vast majority of people in the United States and certainly in the world have never met a Jewish person. And Jews were always the people, because of the nature of our persecution, we were always the people who weren't from there. We were always the strangers. So when you don't know somebody, it's very easy to stereotype them. It's very easy to categorize them and objectify them. And the fact is that the more people get to understand our shared humanity, the more we're able to break down those boundaries of hatred. That's why I'm so blessed and proud to be able to come to be a part of this panel, so that I have the opportunity to learn from all of you, whether it's Catholic, Lutheran, different brands of Christianity or others, because it enriches me in the same way, hopefully, that my presence helps you to understand our tradition a little better too.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, I think too, what following on Tom and as well as in the Rabbi is just simply, those phrases you mentioned, Matthew, and the one that sticks in my head is in John's Gospel after the crucifixion, when the apostles are all locked up in the upper room afterwards, and the line's right there, for fear of the Jews. And I was like, it's a troubling line, but it's also something that's like, and these were their relatives, because they were all Jews. Now, they weren't orthodox by the tenets of Judaism of the time. Obviously, the stumbling block is Christ, his claim to divinity, the crucifixion and the resurrection that we accept in faith. But it also is helpful to realize that there's really no feud like a family feud. And then that takes on its own life once Christianity is Hellenized. Paul was a Jew too, and a Pharisee, and a Roman citizen. Now, how he pulled that off, I don't know, but he had a lot of chutzpah to do it, I mean, quite frankly, and it's just, but all of that history comes to mind, but also with that, time together, things like this, and not, we don't understand what we have in common until we also acknowledge the differences humbly and respectfully.
A last quick comment from Dr. Travail?
Only that I think that the history, I always think history is relevant, and I think it's important for people to understand that history, because they understand how long that history goes. I mean, it goes all the way from the origins of the New Testament up to the current day, and that's why I think that historical piece is so critical as well.
Yes. Thank you all very much. And now to a break.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's AmericanReligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Welcome back, everyone, and what an important topic we have today. Here is hatred that we see right in our midst, and something we need to respond to. Now to our closing comments. Bishop Olson.
I would just like to really close with a citation from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's number 839, and that is the relationship of the Church with the Jewish people. When she delves into her own mystery, the Church, the people of God in the New Covenant, discovers her link with the Jewish people, the first to hear the Word of God. The Jewish faith, unlike other non-Christian religions, is already a response to God's revelation in the Old Covenant. To the Jews belong the sonship, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the worship, and the promises. To them belong the patriarchs, and of their race, according to the flesh, is the Christ. For the gifts and the call of God are irrevocable.
Thank you. Doctor.
Our churches need to continue to educate our own people in our churches on the various ways that we've been anti-Semitic through history in our church bodies and in our in the use, as I think that both you, Michael, and Tom, you've mentioned how even the use of the Scripture itself and the translations that we use convey anti-Semitic commentary, even when it's unintended, but nevertheless is because of the way it's written and how people hear it. And so it's important for us, I think, to revisit how we use that language in our translations that we use. And I think it's, again, a piece of the moral education in our communities about making sure that we are welcoming to the stranger and to those who are different from us, because as people created in the image of God, it's our collective work together to love one another and condemn hatred.
Yes, and one of the first things that I said was that in addition to teaching about how our Bible came to be, the history of the Bible, church really needs to go back and teach the Holocaust. We have to study it. We have to let our children know, because the misinformation and lies are out there and available, and our kids are hearing those things, and sometimes they don't know the realities of that awfulness, and if they can't recognize, if they don't know that history, if they can't see how awful some of this stuff can turn out, then they can go on with some of this information and misinformation and lies, and not see that it's really all that bad. We've got to teach how bad the anti-Semitism can get in order to fight the current versions of it.
So I think that part of the reason why anti-Semitism and other hatreds were so long-lasting is because we tend to want to sort ourselves. And over the centuries, because Jews were the people who didn't worship like everybody, didn't always dress like everybody, didn't come from that place, they were set apart. They were put into ghettos. You can only live over here. Or they were prescribed from certain trade guilds and other kinds of things and forced to practice professions that were the most noxious. Money lending and tax collecting, which were putting them in a place where you had to put a stumbling block before the blind. Where Jews had no choice but to be those people who were most despised. And I think that now that we live in an open society, we really have to do a much better job at breaking down those barriers of separation. Ironically, we are choosing to separate ourselves as a society more and looking at those who look at the world different from us, whether it's a different political persuasion or religious persuasion or whatever it is, as I'm right and you're evil, as opposed to I'm right and what do you have to teach me? And I think that the more that we can break down those barriers that keep us from one another, the better equipped we will be to combat hatred. We have to be reminded that in the book of Leviticus, it doesn't just say love your neighbor, love the one who is kamocha, who is like you. You are also obligated to love the stranger, to love the person who in Hebrew is lo kamocha, who is not like you. And the better that we can learn how to try to break down those barriers and those walls that keep us from each other and understanding each other, the more we will be able to, I think, be able to combat the scourge of hatred, anti-Semitism being part of that scourge.
Well, thank you. What a great discussion today. You know, I think there are two things that I go away with. One is the last comment made by the rabbi, which is about how we break down the barriers between our different communities, how we get to know each other better, because that getting to know each other really, it's impossible to hate when you know and when someone is part of your own family. The second thing that struck me is we've all talked from different traditions about, you know, maybe how we got it wrong in the past. And it's very difficult, I think, for us to face honestly our own mistakes and actually look them in the face. As Carl said, you know, and then the Lutheran tradition, how do you put that in the face that we were wrong? There were things in our past which was wrong. This was unacceptable. And to actually be public about that and be upfront about that. Because while we're not able to do that, that old history still becomes part of the reality today and impacts the way we do today. And that becomes a significant problem. So I hope, viewers, that as you have watched this, that you have some ideas and some perspectives that may enrich the way that you respond in your communities, and particularly to the Jewish community. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestant, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel would uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And now, friends, until next week, the same time, and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.